Nobody believes in the Cincinnati Bearcats this coming Saturday in Lawrence, as oddmakers have spoken ahead of this Kansas matchup.
You are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bearcats. My name is Jeff Carr, and I am Cincinnati all the time. I've worked in multiple university athletic departments, and I've been a football season ticket holder for the Bearcats now for 7 seasons. Locked On Bearcats is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Bearcats, every single day. And we want to thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network in the country. On today's podcast, Corey Evans brings a new dynamic to the men's basketball team, and he dove into a lot of it in the preseason press availability that he had. We'll cover that later on in today's show. In a few minutes, we will look at the finer points of Kansas's win over West Virginia and why the Bearcats must do this one thing on defense that we will lay out here in just a few, because the Bearcats are underdogs by almost a touchdown as the sports books open up on this game, and we're going to begin our show looking at that here today. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. And that's where we're going to begin, is with the fact that the Bearcats are 6.5-point underdogs to the Kansas Jayhawks ahead of this Saturday's ball game in Lawrence, Kansas. And I kind of want to know from you, is it disrespect or is it fair that the Bearcats are 6.5-point underdogs to Kansas? I definitely think there's still that relative mystery that is the Bearcats that I don't think a lot of people buy, the wins over Bowling Green and Northwestern State. Although I would push back and say, well, I mean, they were perfect against Northwestern State. So there's something to be said about that. But I understand it. You're heading into conference play, and your 2 wins came against teams you should beat. Your 1 loss, it's a tough loss. It's a close loss. And I think by the end of this season, it'll look like a good loss. But at the same time, it's a loss. And there were definitely some points in that game that it felt like the Bearcats should have beat Nebraska. But I kind of glean some things from Nebraska here that I think most people would say, based on how Kansas dismantled West Virginia, you're like, boy, the pressure's really on the Bearcats' defense here. I disagree. I think it's on the offense. There's one thing that the defense needs to do. We'll get into that here in a bit when we talk about Kansas's performance. But really, for me, it's what the offense can do to supplement the defense. The defense did its job against Nebraska. The fact that the defense for the Bearcats was on the field for almost 40 minutes is ridiculous. That is all on the offense there. And the fact that, you only got 69 total yards of passing from the Bearcats, it's ridiculous. But the fact that they still had a chance to win it there at the end, that was all because of what the defense did. Because they were able to really stifle Nebraska. Now, Nebraska kept the ball so much because the defense couldn't get off the field on 3rd down, but that was like the one thing. Everything else was really well done. Not a lot of rushing for Nebraska. And I know that they have Mini Mahomes as their quarterback and all this other stuff, but they want to control the clock. They were able to do that because they had dink and dunk passing. They only averaged 5.8 yards per pass from Mini Mahomes. That's not impressive to me. That's just ball control. And so the Bearcats were not able to counter that despite their 200 yards of rushing on the game. And really, that is also something that West Virginia did well against Kansas, is that they ran the ball. West Virginia ran the ball for 195 yards against Kansas on Saturday, despite getting just ran out of the building. Pun intended. But I look at this, and I believe that the defense can get the job done. It's how can the offense supplement it? Because this is where Brendan Sorsby, as much as we have celebrated the perfect day he had against Northwestern State, as much as Russ and myself talked last week about how it feels like the deep ball is coming around for Brendan Sorsby, and it feels like he should be given a little bit more reign to read and react to the defense and maybe mold the offensive game plan around what he sees. All of that being said, this is where he does it. He hasn't convinced anybody through the Bowling Green performance and through the Northwestern State performance, because everybody else around the Big 12 is looking at the Bearcats like, I mean, I got a comment on one of our social posts here on Locked On Bearcats from somebody that said, yes, the Bearcats are irrelevant in the Big 12 picture. I don't buy that, but I also know that they've got to prove it. And I think they will, but I definitely think they're going to cover. I find a hard time saying that I believe that the Bearcats will beat Kansas wholeheartedly, but I think if you were, you say you put a lot of money on win or loss, I still think I'd put a lot of money on the Bearcats winning, but it's all about how the offense supplements the defense here, because Kansas did a good job of limiting West Virginia, and the question here is that West Virginia or is that Kansas? I'm starting to believe it's more West Virginia. They lost to Ohio. They lose to Kansas pretty convincingly. And if you were to ask our friend Mountaineer Paul over at Locked On Mountaineers, he's probably wondering where their next win comes from. So there's some of that I think the Bearcats could get this win. But they're going to have to prove it to everybody in the room, because I think we're all hopeful, but we're not all confident. This offense looks as though it's got the makings of something here. The offensive line is promising. The run game is promising. The receivers, albeit untested, I mean, they got shut down by Nebraska, but Nebraska has done a fantastic job of shutting down passing games all over the place early on this season. But can they continue to develop as well? And is Joe Royer going to be a factor in this one? Are the Kansas defensive backs, and even to some extent their linebackers, going to be able to take Joe Royer out of the game plan? That's what I want to know, because if not, I feel good about the Bearcats definitely covering, maybe winning. And we'll talk about the money line probably a little bit later this week, but really the 6.5 points when the line opens, and that could move. But like Russ Heltman said last week, he thought 4 to 5 would be the line. He thought the Bearcats would be a 4 to 5 point underdog. So 4.5, 5, something like that. 6.5, just almost, I think it's very reactionary to the big time win that Kansas had over West Virginia. And it's very, challenge accepted type thing for the Bearcats too. This is where I think that as much as I've challenged Scott Satterfield and as much as I believe in Brendan Sorsby, they can prove all of this as we get into Big 12 play. Because Kansas is the team that if you're going to make a statement to the Big 12, obviously a big statement would be upsetting Iowa State. But if you lose to Kansas before you do that, then people are still going to be scratching their heads when they look at the Bearcats. But if you beat Kansas and then you beat Iowa State, everybody's antenna perks up and goes, ooh, the Bearcats, huh? The Bearcats. That's what we want to see. That's what we want to see from them as they head to Lawrence, as they get ready for the home game in Iowa State in a couple of weeks. It's a big couple of weeks here to get into Big 12 play, because obviously you're still brand new to the conference, but Kansas is not necessarily a powerhouse for this conference. So can you beat them? Can you get up on them, especially after they're looking red hot. And coming up next, I want to look at just how hot, because they dismantled West Virginia. Quick question for all you college football fans out there. If you had to go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yeah, I said hat. For me, it would be the game. These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles wore by fans back in the 80s and the 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use the code Locked On, you will get your vintage hat for $16.99. Head to thegamecaps.com. That's thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use the code LOCKEDON for an exclusive discount, because legends wear the game. That's code Locked On to get your vintage hat for $16.99. Thank you for making Locked On Bearcats part of your everyday routine and your first listen. If you're not yet an everydayer, please hit that subscribe button because we are free and available on all podcasting platforms. All right, the Kansas Jayhawks are coming in. I mean, their confidence couldn't be higher right now. They're 3-1. They just beat West Virginia 41-10. And quite frankly, when West Virginia got to 10, that was the fourth quarter. So that last touchdown, that's garbage time. That's like one of them things where you're like, all right, it affects the point spread, obviously. But West Virginia never, ever made Kansas feel uncomfortable in this game. Kansas' first two drives were big-time passes for touchdowns. They got up 14-0 really quick. In fact, that was the big key for me, and that's the big key for the defense. As much as I just said, I really liked what the defense did against Nebraska, they've got to do one thing against Kansas, and they did it against Nebraska, but they got to keep doing it, and that is limiting the big plays. They had 3 big-time touchdowns, 2 of them passing plays, one of them being a kickoff return. They had a 94-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. But also Jalen Daniels, the quarterback for Kansas, threw a touchdown pass of 41 yards to a wide receiver and a touchdown pass of 39 yards to their running back. That was the starting running back's only reception of the game, but it was a 39-yard touchdown pass. So they were up super quick, 14-zip, before really West Virginia ever got comfortable on this road contest. The rest of the game, you think about that. That is 80 yards on 2 passes. The rest of the game, Jalen Daniels was 10 for 22 for 100 and what did I say? So that was 80 yards. So his total was 12 for 24. I tried to do math on the fly. I'm sorry if you're new to me and you don't know me from the Locked On Reds podcast. Doing math on the fly is not a good thing for me. I'm a podcaster, not a mathematician. Anyway, Jalen Daniels on the day was 12 of 24 for 138 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just said that 2 of those passes were touchdown passes that totaled 80 yards between the 2 of them. So he literally had 58 yards on the rest of his 10 completions of the day, and he still had 12 incompletions on top of that. So to say that it was an impressive day, it was 2 impressive passes and a pretty mediocre day the rest of the way. But because they got ahead so quickly and because they had the kickoff return for a touchdown, another big-time play, the game was over. The Kansas defense stifled what little bit West Virginia thought it could do. And West Virginia's quarterback he just couldn't do anything. West Virginia ran the ball for 195 yards in this game and lost because they had no passing attack. So that's why I keep going back to the challenges for the Bearcats offense here. How can it supplement the defense? But the defense has to limit big plays because that is the reason that Kansas won this game. 21 of their 41 points came on big-time plays, a kickoff return, and 2 big passes. The other part of this is that when they ran the ball with a good average. Leshon Williams had 19 carries for 129 yards for Kansas. Their first singular running back to run for over 100 yards this season so far. But, 19 carries at 129 yards, that is a fantastic average, the kind of thing that most guys dream of. And he did it against a Big 12 opponent. It wasn't like they played Northwestern State doing that. So we're going to need a big, and it's key that Donte Corleone has gotten some good rest here. Hopefully he is going to be healthy and ready to go. We'll wait for the injury reports for this week. But hopefully we got the Godfather on the defensive line here, and we can see Jack Dingle and the linebacking core really focus in and make sure they take away this run game. But the home run play is where it's all the problem. That's where they've got to make sure they're covering well downfield. They get pressure on Jalen Daniels, because that's also something that we didn't see a lot of, at least on a consistent basis, against Bowling Green, was getting the pressure on the quarterback. And especially with Nebraska, I get it, first game of the year and all this other stuff, and have they grown from that? This is how you show it, but get pressure on the quarterback. Force the quarterback out of the pocket. Jalen Daniels does have some scrambling ability, but force him to be off timing here. Like, take him off script, see what he can do. Because I just don't buy it. Like, 12 of 24, that doesn't seem like the kind of day that I'm looking at Jalen Daniels and saying, boy, really don't know that the Bearcats can stop a guy like that. They've just got to make sure that they take away the top, take the top off the offense, force them to throw a bunch of underneath stuff, and keep them in front of them. Can you do that? That's going to be a tough ask, obviously, because Kansas has got it going. Kansas is really rolling. Bearcats have to stop that momentum. That's going to be the hard part because you're doing it on the road. And that's where I'm sure they got the 3 points for being on the road, 3-point underdog for being on the road. And then they added another 3.5 in here, almost to be, almost a touchdown underdog. I feel good about the Bearcats covering that. I wonder if they can win because they're going to have to put together a complete ball game here. And the special teams unit has looked a lot better to begin this season. But, 94-yard kickoff return for a touchdown is nothing to shake a stick at. You can't just ignore that. How is the kickoff coverage unit going to roll in this one? There were a couple of good punt returns by Kansas as well. One of their drives was set up, one of their early drives where they scored the big-time touchdown. I think it was the 39-yard touchdown pass to Leshon Williams. That was set up by a good punt return. So how do the Bearcats cover those punts, cover the special teams plays, take those things away? The big play is why Kansas dog-walked West Virginia. And West Virginia is looking pretty suspect right now, but at the same time, Kansas did the thing. And as much as we celebrate the fact that the Bearcats were able to execute against smaller opponents and things like that, now they have a conference opponent that has executed against a conference opponent. And Kansas is just riding high here with confidence. I'm curious a bit, too, of how the offensive line is going to face up this Kansas defensive line. There were a couple of sacks in this game, a couple of tackles for loss by Kansas defensive linemen. So are we going to see that constant rotation at right tackle? I know we started to see a lot more to one side of things. But I'm curious how the offensive line moves with this one. This is going to be on the offense mostly. I have confidence that the defense can do its job. But is this going to be another 20-17 loss? Because that would cover the 6.5 points, but that's what we had against Nebraska for the Bearcats. Are we going to see that against Kansas as well? Because at some point, a good loss doesn't help you if you just keep having too many good losses. We need some wins. We need to see the wins pile up against these Big 12 opponents. But coming up, let's switch gears here because when it comes to basketball, Corey Evans really unpacked his experience so far as men's basketball GM and his excitement for this all-new roster. We'll get into what that looks like coming up next. Head on over to FanDuel right now as college football season is rolling right along. And we got Bearcats and Kansas going on this weekend. The Jayhawks in Lawrence. I get it. The Bearcats are on the road. They're underdogs. They were going to always be underdogs in this game. But by 6.5, I feel like I got to take that. I feel like I got to take the Bearcats to cover the 6.5 point spread. I think they will. I think that'll happen. And if you think so too, you should head on over to FanDuel. Plus, new users can get $300 in bonus bets with their first winning $5 bet. They still got this amazing promo going on right now that does not happen very often, does not happen for very long. You got to go take advantage over on FanDuel and download that FanDuel app today. This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. These are certain businesses that really, truly make the neighborhood feel like home. They're all over the place. You think about Goodfellas. You think about a bunch of different local shops and different art shops around the town, whether it's, the sports bar that's packed with folks on game day or even that coffee shop that knows your order by heart. They've all run on Square, and they all bring people together. When businesses thrive in our neighborhood, the whole neighborhood thrives together. And quite frankly, going to Oktoberfest Cincinnati, the whole thing ran on Square. If it weren't for Square, Cincinnati would not be as special as it was this year. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy that you did. Square, See you in the neighborhood. I encourage you to keep the conversation going with me after the show over on Twitter and TikTok. My username over there is at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. And then you can also find me on Instagram. Just flip my Twitter and TikTok usernames around to CarrJeff. And follow the show on Twitter at LO_Bearcats and over on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Bearcats, all one word. Last week, we had the preseason press availability for the Bearcats, and Corey Evans spoke for quite a while. It was actually about like 18 minutes worth of time with the media, and he really unpacked a lot of different things. I was very impressed by what he had to say, and honestly, he went into detail, kind of started with the process of how he got to Clifton.
The first response was hell no. I mean, it ain't gonna happen, man. I actually remember exactly where I was. I was in Barcelona at the time in mid-January, and Wes called me up. And I said, dude, you're out of your mind, man. Like, I started in Oklahoma City when they were a 16-win team, 18-win team, and to see the takeoff, it was a blessing for sure. But, you know, life is about taking chances, and it's about, you don't want to say, why didn't I do that? It's more about going and giving it a shot. And I've known Wes for 15 years, and my belief in him as a human being and as a basketball coach, this wasn't all friendship, that's for sure. I mean, it's my career as well. But coming here and checking the place out a bit more and getting to know Brad Pike and John Cunningham and John Daniel, that was also very, very integral in my belief in this program as a whole. It's a very special place, as you guys well know. It's right there to take off, and to have a chance to act as a servant in a sense and leave a larger impact on human beings and a basketball program as a whole, like this place, that's what won out at the end of the day. It was just the program, the city, the university, and Wes Miller.
When he got to campus, it was smack dab in the middle of the transfer portal season, so he really didn't have any time to ease into the job.
I'm not a guy that lives with regret. The first 4 or 5 days in the portal, though, I was thinking to myself, man, did I sign that contract yet? You know, like, I don't know if this is it. But no, it's crazy how fast the portal moves, especially, you know, they've lowered the window down even further to 30 days. And you're talking about players that you don't even know much about the morning of, and that night you're in the Final Three for them. And where the NBA, this is where the difference is in the NBA and college. NBA is very it's delayed approach. Everything is thorough and it's thought-provoking, and you lay things out. And the transfer portal, you got to be on your P's and Q's. So going into this year, it's how do we prepare internally to be more ready for that cycle in the best, most efficient way possible. But I don't think you can ask any coach in America how they handle the transfer portal and how they are efficient with it. There's no proper way to do it. But you have to really do the intel work, the analytic work, and like the former question, having the chance to coach against Mustafa and Kerr and Sincere, and having that background definitely gave, I think, a leg up with the familiarity and the trust in recruiting those guys.
We'll get a little bit more into the international players, how the roster is really moving with all the international players here in just a minute. But going back to the fact, I mean, Corey Evans came here from Oklahoma City. And so whenever you leave the pros and you go back to college, I'm sure there's a lot of different takes and a lot of different feelings, especially from colleagues there. But he really felt a lot of support.
A little bit of shock, like you said, as far as you're going to leave now when this thing's about to take off in Oklahoma City. But also support. They see the grand opportunity that was there here at UC, and again, it's a new day. and to have the reps and the chance to have a direct impact at a place like this, they understood, I think. I hope at least.
That's something that really impresses me, is that he saw the vision enough with Wes Miller and what's going on here, even though it's a total reset and we as fans are, kind of wondering when are they going to take that step forward. Corey Evans sees it, even though he recognizes still quite an adjustment coming from the pros back to college.
Yeah, I'm still learning, brother. I'm still learning. This is a crazy process. I jumped in March 31st, practically right in the portal. I don't think anyone was really prepared for the transfer portal, and this is a new day in college basketball, college athletics. So there's really no direct job description for what I do. So it's an evolving task list by the day, by the cycle. But what's been great is the experience on the staff with a guy like Wes and Chad Dollar, Andre Morgan, and the continuity that was already here. So I kind of came in saying, you know what, guys, how can I help you out? Whether it's recruiting, whether it's organization, whether it's management, whether it's whatever it might be. But as far as getting a grasp of the job entirely, that's going to be a consistent theme for me the next year or so. And again, college athletics, this thing's changing so much by the day. So by the time I might get a hold of it, it's probably going to change again. But doing my best here.
Kind of like you mentioned, he's got a lot of evolving responsibilities, but one of them has really been, advising the direction of the roster. And one of his key focuses has been on basketball IQ, or as he likes to call it, processing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I was the major catalyst for that. It was more of direct talking points with the staff as far as what do we exactly want out of this roster. And some of that might have been a hole from last year's roster, and it's, in a sense, recency bias. And it wasn't difficult to sell the staff on this being a primary component to what we wanted in our roster this year. So, but what that means to me is, can these guys think in a quick, efficient manner? And can they play different spots? Can they pass it? Can they handle pressure and make the proper decision? And I think we made that a priority in the portal. And we were also pretty lucky. Luck is a major factor in this, with how smart our roster is now. Even the freshmen, Shauna Bives' basketball acumen is through the roof for an 18, 19-year-old kid. Keyshawn Tillery's the same way. So when you have guys out there that can really think the game and play in a mature manner, Kirk Krisha, he's a savant in that regard. And having a guy like Sean, and even bringing guys in like Jordy, their ability to retain information and go out there and play and not make mistakes, and when they do, learn from it and move on. It's been a massive blessing, and I hope that it parlays itself into on-floor success. But last year's roster, we really wanted to make sure we brought in more passing, more playmaking, more shot creating. And the beauty of it is, when you think about passing, you think about guards, right? Guards and wings. And I think a hidden talent of ours is the passing ability of our big men, our front court guys like Mustafa and Jalen Haynes and Baba Miller. Those guys' assist percentages over the years has been super, super high. And in practice, it's been shown just as well how well they can be played through as connectors. And I think it's going to give Wes Miller and the coaching staff more of a chance to play different ways. And I think it's why Wes is so excited right now.
There's definitely going to be some players that show out. There's definitely going to be some great performances. But I think I'm starting to believe that the biggest impact addition to this team this offseason will be Corey Evans. And thanks again for making Locked On Bearcats part of your day. If you've not yet done so, please subscribe, like, and comment. All of those things will help grow this community for Bearcats fans to find more easily. Now, you have to check out the Fire TV College Football Kickoff. It's another big moment on Locked On. college football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll from the Locked On Big 12 show leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview that only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. And thanks again for checking out today's Locked On Bearcats podcast, and I will see you tomorrow.